We are back again with another Q&A. The questions just keep rolling in, and every time I see some new questions come in, I'm like, oh, that is such a good one. And even though people's situations might be slightly unique, I feel like you could probably find yourself in each of these questions at some point during your homeschool years, your years of raising your children. So let's get into it. And if we have not met, my name is Leigh Nguyen, and you are listening to Little by Little Homeschool, where I seek to encourage and edify. And I also, maybe once in a while, tell you, I've heard this, people say, I like that you say, put your big girl pants on. So friend, put your big girl pants on. Let's do this thing. Let's glorify God as we are faithful to home educating and raising our children. Now, this first question, I'm just going in order of the questions as they roll in. That's what I do. I don't kind of rearrange them or anything. So these questions are kind of coming in hot and heavy that have to do with behavior and influences upon our children of other children and other families. And I'm going to reiterate what hopefully I have made clear. It is your job right now to protect your children. You get to choose who influences them. Just like you choose not to send your kids to school, partly probably because of the influence around them, their education, as well as the other students and the teachers and just the entire atmosphere, you are now responsible for then choosing where you are going to place your children and who's going to influence them. So this first question says, my kids are picking up bad language and behavior from other homeschool kids. I keep telling my child we don't say those words. Then we go to homeschool activities and hear other children using bad words. It's extremely important to me to get around other homeschool families. So far, we've ended up with a black eye from another child and picked up several bad words. What do? I wasn't prepared to face this as a homeschool mom. I think that last sentence is really key. And I think we have to be prepared to face this as a homeschool mom. And so that's why I am appreciative of these questions that are a bit similar, because I think that we need to be prepared. And I think when we think beforehand about a situation, how we're going to react in that situation, it's easier to just carry through with what you said you would do when you were looking at it objectively, when you were looking at it outside of the emotions of the moment. And so this question might not be your question, or you might not be in any type of similar situation, but I want to encourage you, maybe right now, or when this podcast episode is done, to think about it. What will we do when we are faced with this? It's not if, it's when. So these homeschool kids are picking up bad language and bad behavior from other homeschool kids. I don't know if these are other Christian families, but we know that it can run the gamut of what we do as far as parenting and discipleship and where our lines are drawn on behavior and how our children act. And it sounds like the line that you have drawn is you don't want bad language and you don't want this negative behavior. And so even though you want your kids to be around other homeschool families, these possibly are not the right homeschool families for you. We don't have to see eye to eye. We don't have to our family culture doesn't have to be the same as somebody else. It can be vastly different, but yet we can get together with that family and we can have joy and our kids can learn from one another in good ways. And so I think you need to draw that line and just say, this is too much. We're not going to interact with these certain families, or we're not going to, sometimes it's a co-op, and whatever situation it is. I know that you are not prepared to face as a homeschool mom, but sit down, think about it, pray about it, talk to your husband about it, draw that line. It is your job to protect your children in whatever way that looks like for you. And people will say, oh yeah, the kids are going to hear bad words. Well, I really worked to protect my children from that. There were certain family functions that we didn't go because I knew the language was going to be a little bit off color. We didn't watch certain movies and shows. This is when they're younger. I think it's really important to just protect their innocence. Give them a childhood. And my kids say now, they're out in the world. They understand, they see things, they hear things, and they will now say, thank you. It felt like we were maybe missing out on things, but I look back now and they're like, I'm thankful that you protected us. So it's your job to protect them. So do what you need to do that in order to do that. The next question, she says she recently found my podcast through her sister who invited her to the conference. And yay, I hope you guys had a really good time. Now, she says, sorry, this question is a long one. And so I'm going to try to condense it. I read through it real quick. It says, this is my 4th year of homeschooling. My boys are in 1st and 2nd grade. My 2nd grader hates math. Now, she capitalized hates. This year especially, almost every day, he tries to manipulate me into letting him skip math for the day or we get into an argument over him not wanting to do it. When he sees the math book, he just loses all momentum during the homeschool day. He will sit and stare at 11 plus 1 on a piece of paper forever. And yes, I've dealt with this. She says in parentheses, a twofold part of the problem is that he seems to have weak fingers and hates writing as well. Well, that would be something to work on. Before I even get to the end of this question, I would say that would be something to work on, is to maybe possibly work on his fine motor skills. Find some type of resources online. Maybe there's some type of like tinkering that he can do. Maybe it's, again, I'm not any type, I would think maybe like an occupational therapist might be able to help with this. So I have no real skills when it comes to this, but I'm thinking like Play-Doh and just doing things that he's not going to think is exercising and strengthening his fingers, but it actually is. So I would actually do that, because if he's hesitating on doing any type of writing, our kids will often, not all kids, but a lot of kids will then not want to do something because they feel like they're not good at it, or they're going to fail at it, or it's hard to do. They don't have the maturity to say, yeah, this is hard, but I need to push through. So I would then first off, as I would work on that. And maybe he doesn't need to go somewhere. He doesn't have to go to an occupational therapist. Maybe it's just looking online, because I mean, what is it's going to hurt for him to play with some Play-Doh while you do some reading? It's not necessarily going to hurt him. It's going to hopefully maybe strengthen his fingers. And I'm sure there's other types of exercise and things he can do. She says, but if she verbally asks him things like, what is 20 plus 13? He has no problem answering right away. And sometimes he will even tell me multiplication problems that he's learned from a number block show. So yeah, if he can tell you multiplication stuff, he's in second grade, that I'm trying to recall that I usually have not gotten to that yet. And especially if he is really hesitant and not wanting you to do math lessons, then he probably most likely has not gotten into it. So she goes through a couple of different curriculums that she has used, and some of them she just feel like it has kind of confused them because it's switching curriculums. So do I have any recommendations on what she should do? She goes on to say, I feel like it's ruining our relationship. Now, this is the key part here of our question, because just as much as math is a trigger for him, his attitude about the whole thing is a trigger for me. It's a losing battle every day, I feel like. Maybe he just needs more one-on-one time, but with an 8-month-old now, 2 things have become so much busier. I want to continue to homeschool him, but if it's going to ruin our relationship, then something needs to change, even if that means sending him to school. It does not mean sending him to school. Let's go back again, work on just those finger things. I'm going to give you a couple of different ideas, and I'm not telling you which order to do them in. You have to know your own child. You do know your own child way better than I do, and I ever could know your child. But I think this hesitation, especially with math, is quite common among children. It doesn't even just mean in homeschool. You could send him to school and he might still struggle with being cooperative and doing his math lessons. And now you have somebody else involved, somebody who is not going to be possibly as compassionate or as accommodating with him. So it does not mean that this has to ruin your relationship. And it will not ruin your relationship if you don't let it ruin your relationship. So I'm going to spit out a bunch of different ideas. You decide what you feel like is the best thing to do right now. What you might need to do, along with the finger strengthening, is just to pull back on the math. Maybe just the math. I mean, if he's enjoying this number block show, then it just is a casual math right now. He's in second grade. He will catch up. When kids decide to catch up on something, they catch up very quickly. Another idea is to do math more orally. I know that we are really used to doing it on paper, but if his mind works in a way where he can add, I mean, especially like something like 2-digit numbers, 20 plus 13, to do that in his head really quickly, then go ahead, allow him to exercise his mind, his brain. He will probably eventually get to the point where he's going to have to sit down and do it on some paper. And maybe you, in the meantime, have worked on strengthening his fingers. But another part of this is working on character and talking about how sometimes we have to do things that are hard and getting him to open up. You want to get to the root of the problem. Does he actually consciously realize that he's having a hard time holding the pencil? Or is that just kind of subconscious, just kind of like you have to pull it out and ask him questions? And don't do this in some type of way that you are, an interrogation. This is just casual talking. Ask him some questions. Give it another day or so. Ask a couple other questions and just casually, as you're doing something else. Remember, math is not just stuff on worksheets. Include him. Say you're doing baking. As we're getting into the holiday season here, there's a lot of baking that's going on. He can learn a lot about math and fractions as you guys make cookies together. And maybe some of the math isn't, maybe isn't like writing with pen and paper. Maybe it's he can just do it in some other way, whether it is some type of like more kinetic type of way. Maybe it's with kinetic sand or regular sand, or just kind of running his fingers through flour and writing down the numbers. That might seem a bit more fun. Now, I know you said you have an 8-month-old as well. So yes, life is full, and you probably have your hands full as well. So try to do that one-on-one time if you can, but just in short bursts. It doesn't have to be really long, and it can be something that he doesn't even really quite know that he is doing math. And going back to the character and his attitude and how he looks at it, we have to remember he's in 2nd grade. So he's 6, 7 years old, or 7, 8, sorry. And that's his maturity level. I would really encourage you to bring dad into it. Boys can really relate to dads, especially at this age. And when dad can kind of come in and gently, but then also call him up to like, hey, let's work on this together. And maybe it's dad doing math with him in the evening for just 10 minutes. And that'll be what will kind of help you guys get over this hump. Just know that this is a hump. This is just a hurdle right now. And years to come from now, you will look back. You'll remember this time, but the struggle will no longer be there. The next question says, my kids are young, 5 kids under the age of 10. I'm trying to give myself some grace, but I also strive and want to be more organized. I find myself comparing our house and even fun homeschool projects to others. How do I find the time? Any tips or tricks? I want to be a fun, organized homeschool mom, but I'm struggling with just keeping up with the homeschool basics, cooking meals and laundry. What am I doing wrong? These other homeschool moms have babies and seem to manage it all. You are not doing anything wrong. You have 5 children under the age of 10. And so we need to give ourselves some grace. And we also have to understand our personalities are different. I don't know if you've ever been inside these other moms' houses. Maybe you have not. And they might show up to co-op, or they might show up to activities, and they have all these really great things that they're doing, but their house is an absolute wreck. But you get to your house and you guys have a good flow to things. You know where things are, and you are keeping up with the cooking, and everybody is full and nourished and getting their naps, and they have peace and joy, and they have time outside. We have to understand that we all have certain capacities. And some of these moms, you might go to their house and be like, wow, it's like super clean. I could probably eat off of the floor. And she has all of these cute arts and crafts, and she has double the amount of kids I have. She's just wired different. But there is always something in our life that has to be let go in order to be able to focus on something else. And so we have to understand that sometimes there's something maybe behind the scenes that you don't know that's going on. And I'm not saying that they have something hidden, some dark secret in a closet. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But I think it's good to have goals. I think it's good to say, I'd like to be a fun, organized homeschool mom. Although I'm trying to figure out what fun and organized. I have some moms, friends that are like super fun, but they're not organized. So I'm trying to put those two in my mind together as to what exactly you are picturing. But I think it's just like you want to keep up with everything, have the house organized, but also keep up and do some fun homeschool stuff as well. As far as the organization, I find for myself, the way that I can keep things organized is that less is more. I don't have a ton of stuff around the house that's extra. We really try to just keep what we are actually using or what we will use. So, for example, we recently moved to all of like fall and winter clothing from our summer clothing. Well, I'm at an age and my kids are all at an age that they'll probably wear the same clothing again next summer. They're not growing that much. So we will store that stuff away. I'm not going to get rid of it all, as opposed to when my kids were young. I was like, okay, nobody is going to fit into this next year. So we are going to get rid of it. So it's keeping what we are using right now, what we know that we will use, and just regularly keeping up with that. I think that when we have too much in our house or too much going on, then it's hard to be able to keep up with that. So maybe you need to have some time, maybe take some time over the winter and just work on the organized part. And I think when you get the organized part done, then you maybe have some more margin in your brain, in your home, in your day, that you might be able to do some of the fun stuff. And you have to include your kids. Now, some of them might be really young, but even if they're 2 years old, they can very easily carry some light toys back to their room and to clean up. But kids really need to be involved in chores. And my kids were always involved in chores. I show you how to do this in the Tidy Home if that's something that interests you. Next question says, like some of the other listeners, I'm also having co-op issues. Dun, 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 dun. Seems to be a theme. I started a homeschool meetup group a few years ago, and we've grown in size, which is awesome, of course, that is. We started out all taking turns bringing supplies and planning short lessons. Now it's just not a feasible option. A lot of other co-ops in our area charge quite a bit per child. I've seen $400 a semester per kid and even more. I'm not wanting to charge anything outrageous, but trying to figure out how to make the group to run smoothly, while also making sure it's fair and no one is taking advantage of. Any recommendation? I am a firm believer in that there's a cost to everything, and it doesn't even always have to do with money. And so, yes, you start a group and it's fun, but then it grows in size, and that is amazing. But with that comes a lot more logistics. And I can almost guarantee that this mom is spending many hours every single week focused on this co-op. And so, yeah, in the beginning, everybody, hey, you bring this, you bring that, you do this lesson, you can do that. But when it gets to be a bit bigger, somebody has to be, we'll say, the head honcho. Somebody has to be at the top. Somebody has to be the one that's making the decisions. And that person is most likely spending a lot of time. Now, sometimes we could say, I just feel like this is a ministry and I will give of my time. Understand that that might only last a season, and in a different season of life, as your kids get older, you might say, I don't have the time for this right now. I really need to step aside, and you hand it off to somebody else. And I don't have a problem with you possibly charging for this. It's a lot of time on your part. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be making and raking in the dough or anything like that. And again, you can just keep it as a ministry and you don't have to be paid anything at all. It really is your choice. And I think that as Christians, we have, trying to put my words well here, we have a hang up when it comes to money. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. It does not say that money is the root of all evil. Yes, money can lead to a lot of evil, but the love of money is just a thing. It's a thing that we have given value to. I will give you money for something that you have made. That money, so you make a product and I give you the money for that. That pays for the supplies of that product. That pays for possibly maybe the shipping. That pays for your time. And I think that your time is really worth getting paid for. And so I think that when we have this hesitation to charge money, it's because we're thinking it's has to do with the love of money. But no, it's just an exchange of services. And so that is what you're doing. Instead of the parents having to think about these lessons and to think about all the supplies needed and to possibly find a place to do this, you might be meeting at possibly a church. You might have to pay insurance in order to meet at that church or at that community center or wherever it is. There's going to be costs involved. And you, as the organizer of it, can't pay all those costs. And basically, you are just collecting the funds in order to distribute it out so that everybody can have all the resources and all the supplies and the lessons and everything that they need. So do not feel guilty about charging money. Now, yes, some might be charging $400 a semester per kid, and that might be very valid for what they are offering. I don't see a problem with that, and we all get to choose. If the cost of something is more than our budget allows, then we simply do not participate in it. There were many things that my kids did not participate in over the years because the cost just did not fit into our budget. And guess what? We moved on with life, and so did those people, and everybody's fine. So I think that it is absolutely fine for you to say, look, we're going to restructure, and we're going to have all the supplies, and this is what it's going to cost. Now, this might be hard because you are in a school year right now, but you may be able to do a slight restructure during the Christmas break. I would start to give everybody a heads up right now, letting them know that there's going to be a slight change. And so you then do what you need to do, figure out what that slight change is. And then possibly next homeschool year, you just do a big overhaul and you say, this is the program that we are offering. This is everything that we're going to offer. And this is the cost associated with it. And one final question before we end today's Q&A. And there are a bunch more questions. So I think I'm going to do another one here later this month, probably around Thanksgiving, just because I know everybody has stuff going on, but that might be a fun little thing to listen to while you put the turkey in the oven. The last question says, as a Christian household, we struggle with homeschool groups around the holidays. Halloween has been the worst. Do you have recommendations for fun ideas for homeschooling around Christmas? I'd love to find more fun activities that are more Christ-centered. My kids are wondering why we don't have a magic elf that does bad things, a special snowman, and etc. It seems like every year there's a new holiday trend I'm not keeping up with. We do cut down a tree and decorate it, bake cookies, and they receive Christmas gifts. Yet I feel like they're missing out when they hear about what everyone else is doing. This is hard because we can have convictions, and in last Q&A episode, I did talk about convictions and how sometimes we have convictions that other Christian families don't have convictions of. And we just need to remain faithful in what God has convicted us about. You and your husband, you have your reasons for the choices and the things you're going to participate in and the things you're not going to participate in. I think it's very important that you relay that to your children, not in a way that's condescending or demeaning to other people, that we teach them grace for other people and their own convictions and their own faith walk. And then we explain to them what our convictions are and how that ties into biblical truth and how we feel that we need to be raising them. And someday they will appreciate that. Well, they should appreciate it right now, but someday they will decide whether or not they're going to, those are their convictions or not. But I think that when we provide them with the whys, instead of the parenting of go and do this, and the kids say, why? Because I said so. Now, there are times, yes, that we need to be like, listen, I have asked you to do this. We've already explained this. There are times you get to that, but if that should not be the default. When your kids say, how come we don't get dressed up and trick or treat? Because we said so, that we don't. That's legalism. And so that is not going to reach your children's hearts. And again, someday they will be able to make their own decisions for their own selves and for their own families. And it might be contrary to what you have decided for their upbringing. But I think a lot of the problem that has come from the deconstruction and the progressivism is the fact that parents have not told kids why. And I felt that too. I didn't really know why. I didn't understand things. And so I think it's really important that you explain to them why. And then focus on the good things that you guys are doing. Instead of looking out maybe on, we'll go back to Halloween. I know that's already come and gone. Instead of maybe looking out and seeing all the kids running up and down the street collecting candy, you guys do your own thing, whether that's inside your home. If you're not feeling like that's something you need to participate in, again, we are not judging anybody. We are sticking to our own convictions. And I've had different convictions about Halloween at different seasons. And so understand that maybe you need to do something different. And maybe that means you're not even at home that night. Maybe that means going and doing something else. Or maybe it's just closing the curtains and having your own fun party kind of night with your family and showing them that there's an alternative to things. And so when it comes to Christmas and all the extra things, you can explain to kids, and I've done some of the things over the years, and do I look back and wish I didn't? I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. But explain to them maybe why people are doing the things that they're doing, but then also just say, it's not our place to go and tell other children these things. So they might believe in something that your kids don't believe in, and you've given your kids the reason why. Just tell them it's okay. That's between them and their parents. And I think when we talk to our kids in more of an adult way, no matter their age, they appreciate that. And they will then hold those truths that you say to them a little bit closer. So still do the fun things that you want to do. When it comes to the holidays and Christ-centered, yes, do Advent. I do have a lot of ideas about Christmas. For the first 2-3 years of this podcast in November, December, I did a ton of episodes about Christmas. So go into your podcast app, type in Little by Little Homeschool, and then type in Christmas. And you will get a whole list of different episodes, and you can pick through and listen to all kinds of different ones. But Advent, I did do a recent episode about Advent, and I do have some resources and things I recommend for that. Keep that as the focus. And there is plenty to be able to keep you busy and to keep you joy-filled during the Christmas season when we keep it Christ-centered. Thank you for joining me for today's Q&A episode. If you would like to have your question answered, I'd love to answer your question. Go ahead and check out the link in the show notes. Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If it was just what you needed to hear, would you do me a favor and share it with a friend? And if you would like to connect more, social media links and more are in the show notes just for you. I promise to see you back here real soon.